Hello, welcome to another episode of the DRH Show. As usual, in each episode, I'll be talking to interesting people within psychology, mental health, and well-being. Today, I'm joined by a researcher and a mental health advocate, among others, Shalhavit-Simcha Cohen. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here, Shalhavit. Let's start off with you telling us your backstory, your trajectory in life, and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Wow. My trajectory life. Well, I guess I grew up in Israel, and growing up in conflict, I think, the Middle East, there's always, as a child, you see wars, you go to the army after high school, and the question on my mind was, what is important to people, and what are we really about? And what kept on coming up for me, especially in funerals, I'd be like a little child sitting in a funeral and asking, what do people remember of us? And people usually didn't mention the car that the person had or how beautifully they dressed. What I saw was people mention how happy the person was, how happy that person made other people around them. And I started asking myself, well, if this is really what we're for, then how can I promote that? And then throughout my personal experiences and my own journey, and growing up in a religious family, obviously the beginning of my path started very religious, where I went through religious studies and rabbinic studies and learned the Bible inside out and the scriptures. And there's so much richness in the scriptures. And at a certain point, I felt like I needed a more concrete, research-based platform to be responsible when I tell people this, when I give people advice. I found myself in a leadership role after being in rabbinic school, and I worked for the Israeli government. I was a representative of the Jewish agency for Jewish communities around the world, and I kept on asking, how can I be more responsible when I give advice? So that's kind of like the long story that brought me to positive psychology. And it was about 10 years ago, a little bit more, when I heard about this most popular course at Harvard called the Happiness Class. And they did exactly what I wanted to do. They were studying human flourishing, what makes communities thrive, what makes individuals thrive. And I spent about a year both taking the course at Harvard online and trying to reach a professor and saying, this is what I want to do with my life. And after rigorous studies and working on it, I met with a professor at Harvard. He came here to Israel. We started looking at ways to introduce research on well-being to the Israeli government and educational system. And I ended up moving to Harvard as an intern, then as a researcher. I did my master's there, and found myself really fascinated by finding ways to bring helpful information to people in an informal way. I find media and pop music as, pop stars and celebrities sometimes influencing people's opinions much more than politicians or educators. And so I kind of found myself in that place between the politician, between the educator and the artist. And that's where I am today. So I spent the past 10 years, I did my master's at Harvard in digital design and storytelling, and focus on user experience design. So really thinking of who are you trying to bring a message to and how to bring that to, in addition to developing my artist self through film, through storytelling and music. And today I make music videos on mental health. It is part of my PhD at the University of Edinburgh. So now I'm actually in Scotland after 10 years at Harvard. And in Scotland, I'm working with Amy Hardy, who produced films for the BBC and documentaries, really looking at how to impact the audience through film, right? Because film is some sort of passive platform, right? And so my research today is looking at engagement through audiovisual means. So and specifically music videos. So really all that coming down to here. Before I left Harvard, I was awarded their annual Bach Prize for my public service. I've done a lot of projects on happiness at Harvard and Florida and just around the United States. And now I'm bringing that to PhD research on developing effective multimedia and mental health and well-being. And with young people, I make music videos and electronic music on topics of well-being and mental health.
And of course, with everything that you've done, it all comes from your experience and about your quest for positivity. And of course, just more recently, you spoke at the Scottish Parliament about mental health. If you could tell us more about it, what was like, and what did you propose to the Scottish Parliament?
Oh, well, so at the Scottish Parliament, I'm trying to give you like my short story. And Dennis, thank you so much for your listening. Really, there's a part of my story that I kind of dropped out, which is not the academic journey, but something that influenced my journey. So I was mentioning how I went to religious studies, and on my way to more like the secular, research on psychology, I found myself in an imbalance. Actually, I got very obsessive with exercise, and I started doing fitness modeling, partially trying to promote the projects that I'm creating in positive psychology, but I got really hardcore into fitness, and I ended up in the hospital. So I was Miss Fitness of Israel in 2011. I was a bodybuilder and representative. And then in the hospital, I discovered that I have an eating disorder. So it's athlete's anorexia or orthorexia, so overexercising. So I was diagnosed with an eating disorder. And now together with my research, and that was like 7 years ago. So so I have that personal lived experience of a mental illness myself. And that, I never really knew that was part of wanting to be happy was, I guess, trying to get out of the obsessions of my eating disorder as well. And so the Scottish Parliament, I'm a representative as a PhD researcher as part of the cross-party group on mental health. And so the cross-party group brings practitioners and academics and also people with lived experience to advocate for policy change. And so they invited me to both share my story, my personal story of recovery, in addition to talk about my research, and members of parliament were asking me about directions that I could give from my both lived experience and today the research that's around it on multimedia engagement to make mental health resources more accessible. I mean, I was personally focusing on making things that already exist more accessible, but really the conversation was about, how do we help people that don't usually get a lot of help? And there was some really amazing people there. Emma Harper, who's a member of parliament, and there's a whole list of people who are trying to find ways to help people with what they're dealing with, especially now during COVID. So that was, in a nutshell, it was about 2 weeks ago. And the cross-party group on mental health they have monthly meetings, and we're all trying to find active ways to make a difference that are practical. And so I'm really happy. It was my first time I spoke there, and I'm really excited to make a difference.
Brilliant. And of course, they wouldn't be inviting you there if you're not really the perfect person to, as you've said, make mental health awareness more accessible to the general public. And talking about accessibility, I understand that another thing that you try to do is spread awareness about mental health. And you try to do this through your organization called PosiFest. Tell us more about PosiFest and how did it start?
Okay. First of all, do you hear sometimes the background noise? There's a little bit of noise outside. I just want to make sure it's not affecting everyone who's listening right now.
It's very subdued, so we can tolerate it.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So PosiFest, woohoo! PosiFest is, so, I remember I mentioned I started at Harvard studying the happiness class and really learning about research on motivation, research on self-esteem, research on communication. There's a lot of research on divorce, but there's actually a lot of research following happily married couples, and there's a lot of research that could be helpful, but it doesn't reach people. It's not accessible, right? How many people do you know that read the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology? The average number of people who read an article in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology or alike is about 3, and that includes the author's mom. So not a lot of people read journal articles, and so I find myself in the system as kind of a catalyzer or bridge between the ivory tower and the main street. That's part of the goal that Tal Ben-Shahar, my professor, who taught the course at Harvard, he really was advocating to bring the research out. And PosiFest is kind of like an outcome of that direction and that purpose of bringing research out to the public in an accessible way. And it started, so PosiFest was born last, it was somewhere around this time of the year, a year ago in Edinburgh, in Scotland. And I basically met with I passed by, how much time should I tell you about how PosiFest was created? Because the story is great, but I can tell you about what PosiFest is today. Tell me how much you want me to share with you.
Now, I just want to touch upon what you said earlier about accessibility, and you really mentioned something poignant about spreading awareness about mental health. You said that the Journal of Personality probably has very minimal leadership compared to, let's say, if you try to use a different medium such as the visual media. And I could actually quite relate to that because I'm running a blog, and I think blogs are really more powerful than academic journals. And just to give you an example, there's actually a website called SimilarWeb, and SimilarWeb is a website where you can actually measure just check how much traffic a particular website gets. And if you put in the URL of let's say Psychological Bulletin, you'll be surprised. They just have probably about 1 million views a month. And if you compare that to Psychology Today, I'm quite sure you've heard of Psychology Today. It's the most visited psychology blog. They have 30 million views in a month. So you can see the discrepancy. And I think it really captures what you've said earlier. Why is it that a medium which leans towards, the lay people, they can capture an audience, whereas a content produced by academic and, like what you've said, those people in the Ivy Tower, they're certainly doing something important about mental health, but why is it that they don't connect with their target audience? And yeah, I do applaud you for trying to bridge that gap, because there is really a disconnect between the Ivy Towers and the lay people who are supposed to be the recipient of what we're doing about mental health.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dennis. It's so helpful to have even more backup for what I'm about and what I'm up to. And definitely, the Ivory Tower is important for what the Ivory Tower is important for, right? Rigorous research and peer-reviewed studies have to use certain words that are very specific and very accurate in a certain way. And that's what that's for. And then there's a very, an area, just like you said, Dennis, that's lacking, that there's a pendulum shift that we're trying to do, both yourself and me, of bringing helpful information from academia in a more accessible way. And that's just so cool to hear the different viewership between academic journals and Psychology Today, and so Psychology Today reaches people who read, who would read a blog, and then I'm kind of like a step more towards the people who don't even like to read. And then, there are a lot of people, there are different types of learners, right? Some of us love to read, some of us love to listen, some of us love to watch. And I'm more of a visual artist. So the skills that I have are good for those who like to watch. And specifically, I'm looking at young people and reaching them where they mostly hang out. During Corona, it's not exactly where they hang out, but I'm looking to create a way to reach them in clubs, or reach them on like their Instagram, and finding a way to do that, to hook them through visuals that they like, through the music type that they like. So I choose, in my work, I choose to use electronic music. I even choose to use participants who are young people. If you want, one of my projects was making music videos on mental health with young people at an inner city high school in Massachusetts. I don't know if you heard of Springfield. It's where The Simpsons came from. So Springfield, Massachusetts, and I met the students, and the first step I did was really, in the Torah of user experience design, you first listen to them and see what they like. So I asked them to send me what videos they like to watch, right? If I want to make a video that they would watch, I want to see what they like to watch already. And I was shocked. They sent me videos, and I keep looking at videos, and as a visual person, it was so clear. And how did I not think about it before? Dennis, there were no white people in those videos. Like, duh, most of the participants in that school were, people of color. They were Black, they were Hispanic, they were Latino. Why would they watch people that don't look like them? Right? So if I want to make a video that reaches those kind of participants, I need to have them in a video. If I want to make a video that reaches young people, I can't star in my videos so much. So the last music video that I created is It Okay to Have a Bad Day?, where I speak with young people from all around the city, who are giving me their advice for themselves when they're having a bad day. And we turn it into like a documentary music video project. And the goal is to reach people like them. And when people, there's Albert Bandura, he's a researcher on what he calls self-efficacy, like that. Self-efficacy is a notion that we can. And Bandura, one of his anecdotes is that when you see people that are like you succeeding, it increases your own sense of self-efficacy. You feel like you can. And so people who watch that video that I was just mentioning, they see people like them that are talking about their coping skills. What is their advice for themselves when they're having a bad day? So when you talk about your advice for yourself, you get very sensitive. And that opens people up, because that's the element of authenticity that we love, right? We love watching reality TV because it's very real. So we talk to people about their advice for themselves, they get very real. And so in that music video, the interesting thing now is I'm showing it to audiences. And when young people watch that video, they feel an amazing, they share with me that they feel a strong sense of self-empathy. Like they feel like it's okay for them to also have a bad day. And suddenly they want to share their own coping skills. And they also feel more social empathy because they see all the different people in the video, and they're like, oh, other people are going through a rough time sometimes as well. So that's, so I'm giving that intro of what I do in my research and my projects, and how I do that to explain why PosiFest was created. Right? The goal was to bring helpful information to people out there on the street. And I passed one day by the Pear Tree Gardens, which is a huge venue right outside of the university. There's a screen, there are screens with projection screens that are brighter than the daylight. Anyone who passes notices them. And I walked in and I spoke with the manager. I was like, if we could project information like that here, what a difference would that make? And the manager was like, why not bring a few different performers and mental health related entertainers to create a whole thing. And what he didn't know was that for the past 10 years, I've been dreaming about creating a mental health festival. And the concept is to bring games and activities that are connected to mental health research, to coping skills, to actionable goals, but all through an entertaining way. Right? So we have comedians that share their recovery story in a comedic way, or just share helpful tips through comedy. There are musicians like myself, and there are a lot of others. The last video of Demi Lovato is It's Okay Not to Be Okay. There are very helpful pop musicians, like pop songs that kind of all together come to, to share that humanness and togetherness. And then in the festival, in the physical festival that was planned, PosiFest. So PosiFest was established back then, almost a year ago. And so we had a lot of volunteers and academics and a lot of artists and musicians and comedians. We had, there's like games, actually like they're board games that increase your self-esteem. When you start recognizing positive faces through all the negative faces, because usually we recognize right away who's negative. So it's like different like brain training and things that the participants who come to the festival, and that's open to the public, people who come could just walk in for even 15 minutes and get something for themselves. There's like an arts and crafts area for creating a positive mantra for your room, but things to kind of first of all increase awareness. Mental health is something that everyone deals with. And then there's mental illness that we're all somehow connected to. We're all on some sort of spectrum, either ourselves or someone in our life. And so even if someone walks into the festival and they don't necessarily need something for themselves, they get some information to help loved ones. And so that was the purpose of the festival. And February was when we started actually having the physical meetings with the team. And then March 28th was the festival, but 3 weeks before COVID started. And we decided to move the festival online to be more accessible. And the response was tremendous. We had 11,000 views on the day of. We had 15 hours long of, and we were able to get performers. We had a poet from India, a celebrity from California. We had someone, a fortune teller from Israel. We had so many people on this online festival. And since then, COVID has continued, and we just decided to keep on going every day for, between 15 minutes to 2 hours. It really depends on what happens. And the connecting theme is bringing helpful tools in an accessible way. So there's some bloggers, you see some musicians, and again, trying to reach more people. We're not very focused on just young people. We have a host on PosiFest, Dia. Her nickname is Princess. She's 10 years old. We have Maggie, who's who's now in retirement age. We have people my age. We have a whole we have just different ages and different ethnicities. All right, we have Idu from the Gambia, and we're all kind of there to share our coping skills, invite people, and host people in short videos to share coping skills. And we have workshops. We're looking at ways to make PosiFest is not even a year old yet. So we're constantly looking at ways to make helpful information accessible in a fun way.
And I'm quite sure that next year, hopefully, if we get to have a more, less restrictions, you would be able to host a physical event. Now, what I just want to also point out is that, of course, the overarching thing of what you do is really about mental health. But another aspect of what you do is you also try to promote body positivity. And I could tell that because you wrote a piece for PsychReg. It's about your hair, about your identity, and you also talk about your body. Earlier, you just alluded to about you trying to stay fit. So if you could just talk us more about why is it important for us to be more, shall we say, accepting of our changes in our bodies?
That's a brilliant question, and it's body diversity or body type diversity. Is a topic that I think needs a lot of attention, meaning there's not enough attention given to it. We still grow up with Barbie dolls, and yes, there are new Barbie dolls with different body types. However, the models that go on runways, even though we already have big size models, which is a new thing, right? We have large size models. We don't have short models. Right? Even the large size models are tall. We still have some sort of perception in society of what is a better body. And in nature, having one type of body is actually first of all, it's not a thing, and it's not a healthy thing, right? You don't want all cats to be black and skinny, right? You love the fluffy cats, you love the different colored hair cats, right? In animals, it's so normal that there are different body types, and they're different, for different conditions, for different purposes. And we are, as a human species, we're so diverse. And thankfully we have so much more awareness for skin color. And in my blog, I'm sharing, my growing up with big curly hair. which was, it's still something that's getting more in the media. I'll give you an example. Look at hosts today, in popular TV shows. There's still not a lot of hosts that actually have big, kinky, curly hair, especially if there's no product in it. I actually have product on my hair right now. I don't usually do that. So, there's less fizz. But, my natural hair is very fizzy. And the article is like a big fizz. I didn't wash my hair for 3 weeks, just to show what the natural hair is. But it's still accepted in the media to have very straight hair, to have like very white features. And we are getting more diverse. And that is great. It's great that we're getting more diverse. And there's still a lot more work to do, especially when it comes to body type. We have different body types. I went through a journey of changing my body type. I starved myself in order to have a body type that I thought was the more acceptable body type. And it's not a great experience. It's our brain is made out of cholesterol. And so being below your normal body fat impacts your serotonin and dopamine and changes your social interactions. For a long time, I cared about going to the gym much more than being with my family or friends. There's some sort of survival mode that is turned on that is still perpetrated in the media and commercials of what a healthy body is. And healthy body changes through generations and locations. 100 years ago, in different places in the world, and still today, some places, it is more acceptable to be even obese, because back then it represented being rich, right? You're rich, so you're able to eat a lot. So obese, in that perception back then, obese was healthy, was the attractive, was the wanted, was the desirable. And being white also in a lot of places was desirable because that means you're covered, you don't need to work in the sun. Today, we have a different perception, because if you're white, that means you don't have time to be outside. And that's the stories, right? It's stories that we have, right? White and dark and tan, they're just different colors and different pigmentation of the skin. You could get tanner if you go outside. You could get whiter if people put on whitening creams. But what I'm coming to is that importance of accepting the body types. Like we're so much more accepting now that the skin colors, but like today, the muscular, like back then being muscular and skinny would mean that you have to work in the field all day and being tan. Today, being tan and muscular and skinny means that you have time to have a fitness coach and you have time to go to the gym. So you're probably financially more stable, or you have time to go to a tanning booth or be outside on vacation, right? If you work in McDonald's and you're covered with, you're covered from the sun all day, then you will turn more pale and you will gain more weight. And so we have a different picture today of what it means to be bigger, larger bodied. But they're all just stories, right? And we associate a story with good and bad. Even the word fat today is mostly negative. Like saying this is fattening usually means you don't want it, or there's a wrong attached to it. Like the word wrong is something that the word wrong is not a physical feature. It's our opinion about something, right? So today we have an opinion that fat means wrong, when fat is just fat, and fat is not negative. And so, so I think that gives you a little bit of what I mean when I'm saying body type diversity, like accepting that there are different bodies, and they're good for different things, and they're all healthy, and strength is not. There was recently in one of those competitions, like one of those entertainment competitions in the television, right, where they have like all these, like being a ninja, right? And there was like a big bodybuilder, and myself being a bodybuilder, I know that having big muscles doesn't actually mean you're stronger. It just means you have big muscles. There's like this muscle man who was a bodybuilder, and he tried, and he fell right in the first physical challenge. And then there was a guy who kind of looked skinny, but he wasn't a bodybuilder. He had inner strength. He actually exercised all those routines, and he won. So what we see is not actually, doesn't really mean a lot. But because we are visual creatures, and because the media is a visual mean, we tend to go towards a visual ideal, where the visuals only mean visuals. And actually in my song, Everybody Want to Look Good, I'm playing with that perception of like, we all want to look good. And the fact that I want to look good, like, looking at the flip side means that everyone wants to look good to me. So like, what is this race about? Helping someone else feel good would make you more loved than trying to look good to someone else. So there's a lot there that has to do with mental health and body type and acceptance and diversity.
You mentioned that people are very visual, and I'm also very visual, so I can't help notice that you actually wear glitters most of the time. Is that also part of your thing about positivity, to spread happiness and being positive through glitters?
Yeah, thank you. And if you can see my glitter, yeah, you can see a little bit of the glitter. I always wear glitter. I actually promote a biodegradable glitter company, so I glitter responsibly. A lot of glitter is not biodegradable, and but the first and foremost, I just love glitter. I guess you could tell. Well, my color is fading, but I don't have the normal hair color, and for me, a lot of it is to kind of get out of the story that I have of the right and wrong, and this is what a grown-up should be. I like glitter. Starting with that, I like colors. Starting with that, and then continuing into that world of acceptance, of self-expression, of not trying to fit into what you think is desirable on the outside world, but really, I guess it's like encouraging play. And I'm writing an article now. I'm teaching a course at the University of Edinburgh, and we're writing an article about the importance of teaching together. And we needed a quote from each one. I said, like, having more fun is actually important. We keep on forgetting the importance of fun, but today with COVID, I think we're so much more present to the importance of actually enjoying what you're doing or throwing in fun. So that's kind of like the initial thing about glitter. And then I have this like whole slogan that I kind of say, like, all those things are for you to remind myself that I'm a magical creature. And a magical creature doesn't have to follow the norms of what I might be supposed to be, or some sort of social norm, because I'm a magical creature, so I could create what I want. It gives me a lot of freedom, and how I see myself. And I think for the people who see me, it's like a little kind of like, don't expect me to be some sort of box, both in my body type and my hair and the glitter that I wear.
Now, of course, another thing that you do is you have a musical career. So if you could just talk us through about your musical career and just give it a bit of, I suppose, a research-based perspective on how music helps in relation to our mental health.
Oh, wow. So first of all, the way that music helps mental health, there's a lot of research, both music and visuals. Those are like the hearing and the visuals that are not written, right? It's not text. We have a different learning that occurs when we engage with art, right? When we engage with music, when we engage with colors, and that's a whole world of experience that is very hard to use words to describe an experience, but it taps into a different realm and creates a sort of accessibility, right? So people that watch soothing, there's a project actually also at the University of Edinburgh called Project Soothe, and it's a huge project, and it's global, where people send pictures that relax us, that relax them, and there's a whole online, if you look on Project Soothe, pictures to relax you, but really pictures and music are out of also smell, different ways to trigger experiences that could be positive and could open a way for you to learn, right? Also, it could also be comedy, right? The different informal ways to encourage learning. And so I'm using music and imagery to encourage learning of academic information in a fun way. And so, if it's music, if it's video, if it's fun, glitter or colors. And And so you're asking about my personal music.
Yeah, your
Right?
your career as a musician.
My career as a musician. That's a really good question. I actually never dreamt about being a musician because I knew for a fact that I can't sing. I was, the normal, the picture of, friends driving in a car, and I'm sitting in the back seat, and everyone's screaming from the top of their lungs, and I'd be like humming and then stopping because I can't really sing. So that was me only 2 years ago. And I went through this journey. Right, there are a lot of amazing experiences and programs that are research-based too, right? There's psychotherapy, there is cognitive behavior therapy, and there's an organization in London called, well, they have centers around the world, it's called the Landmark Forum. And the Landmark Forum, you kind of get to understand part of the narrative that you have about yourself. Even though we know the narrative, they have a really, really intense technique of unleashing what they call blind spots. And so I realized, so I did the forum about 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, and I realized that when I was 4 years old, I was sitting on the carpet in my living room, and my mom walks, and I was crying, and my mom walks in and screams at me. She looks at me and she starts screaming. Now, as a 4-year-old, you don't really understand what happens in the world. You kind of just try to make sense of what people tell you because you're just, you're young, and the grown-up knows. So if the grown-up is really screaming, I realized that the decision that I made back then when I was 4 was that there's something deeply wrong and it's safe to be quiet, right? I just got quiet. Now, I actually remember that throughout my life, it was, one of the maybe nightmares that I had, but like just stopping to cry and going through life with this, like, a decision that I made that it's safe to be quiet. I don't know if you notice, I'm pretty soft-spoken. And I've kind of collected evidence throughout my life that it's safe to be quiet, and it worked. It is safe to be quiet. Even though I colored my hair colorful, I was never able to sing like really loudly. I even took a voice lesson where I tried to get to a high note and I just started crying. And so in the Landmark Forum, kind of going through that, I put in place, you kind of take responsibility for yourself. And I was like, all right, well, if I could declare that I'm singing, like it's probably not going to work, but I'm putting all the intention, and I did that process of declaring that I'm singing. And every time I get scared, I kind of remember that that's a 4-year-old that's scared. And suddenly I could just be loud and like, I could still be kind. I don't need to be aggressive, what I thought loud meant. I could still be kind and loud and have a great time. And so starting from that, it was a month before my birthday. On my birthday, I told my friends, hey, I'm starting to sing. And there's a guy that did beatboxing. And he said, oh, let's do something together. And I was like, I don't know, I can't do it. But it was like the small steps where I was like, okay. And every time I got that I could just be loud. And, the fear comes back because for 36 years, I trained myself with one way of thinking. But I really kind of recreated myself, and it's an amazing journey that I'd recommend to everybody. Like the Landmark Forum, you find in the forum what is something that, or a bunch of things actually in your relationship with people in your life, and you kind of remove them and create something new. So that was me, and I'm now on Spotify. I'm a musician. If you Google my name, I'm a musical artist. It was not reality 2 years ago. I was in, some of my songs are on the radio in Scotland, and I'm still creating. It's this like new discovery for me. And my PhD, which started as videos on mental health, which were just fun videos for Instagram, or now they're music videos, which is what I love, because I love clubs and I love dancing in clubs. I love meeting people in clubs, and in clubs is where, there are a lot of songs that play in a club that the words kind of penetrate, right? It's all about the money, money, money. So instead, have a song that tells you you are enough, or encourages, normalizes negative experiences, normalizes negative emotions, or encourages social support. Like, how cool would that be if young people, when they're drunk and most vulnerable and hanging out with their friends, would have messages that actually help them flourish? So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, and I'm a musician and I sing, and on PosiFest I'm singing sometimes. I just released one yesterday while I'm just singing in my living room, and that was not possible a year and a half ago. It's really fun.
You've clearly done a lot, Shalhavit. So I was just gonna say, I was just gonna ask you if there's any particular individual or particular book which has the greatest influence to how you approach things.
Oh, wow. Well, I think things that really influence us, in my experience, there were, there's like what book influenced me, but what book actually made a difference for me. And as like, I really recommend the Landmark Forum as an experience. However, the book that really influenced me is the course that I helped with 10 years ago at Harvard. It was called the Happiness Class, or Psych 1504. Because it was the most popular course then, there was a lot of pressure to turn it into a book. So there is a book called Happier by Tal Ben-Shahar, the professor, trying to take the class and kind of put it into, short, actionable parts. And I think it influenced me the most because I helped the writing part, right? I did the translation to Hebrew. I edited the translation to Hebrew, so I was very active in that, and there are a lot of practices that I took. And I'm a person with a lot of self-discipline. So like, it said, go do that, write a gratitude journal. I was like, okay, writing a gratitude journal. But I think that was, it's a simple book. It's very readable and very reader friendly. It's not very thick. So I would say Happier. And on my website, there's actually a list of books that made a big difference for me in my life. But I think because I was very active in the book and participating in the book, that made a difference for me. Yeah.
Now you're clearly working within the creative sector, and just about a month ago for the World Mental Health Day, I've co-hosted a conference where we had a panel talk from people from the creative industries, and we asked them to talk about what are the misconceptions about within the creative industries in relation to the mental health. And we've heard a lot of answers. So I just want to hear it straight from you, from someone who works within the creative sector as well. So what's the misconception about, people who are, express themselves creatively in relation to their mental health?
Ooh, that's a good question. I was not prepared for that. Well, I'll just answer from my personal experience. I know that as a creative person, right, my PhD is on clinical psychology, but it's also it's interdisciplinary. So I work in the film department, and I'm very emotional and I'm expressive. I share myself like crazy online. Like I literally, I just turn my skin inside out and share that with the world. I love it, and I'm also very diligent, and as hard as it is for me, English is my second language, so reading in English is difficult, but I'm very diligent. I remember my professor, the film school professor, said she's not used to, there's some sort of perception that artists are kind of floaty-boaty. And, I'm very, I'm very to the point. I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing. Let's do it. Let's create it. So maybe maybe I don't fit the mold of of the artist that's lost out there, not thinking about finances or anything, or at least that's how I would like to occur to myself. It seems that that's how I occur to other people, which is not how usually artists occur to you, or at least the stigma of the artist that has the room all messy and so.
And what's the most important thing that you want the public to know about your work? You're a researcher and you're also a creative person. So what's the big message?
The big message is let's party. I, professionally, I'm kind of sitting here and I'm like, I'm just sharing myself. Is there anything I could promote? Well, from my heart, I would promote PosiFest. It's free. We're always happy for people to come and share their experience to help others. And it's also empowering when you know that you might be helping somebody, and you will, because we reach a lot of people. So someone could get that help. So definitely promoting PosiFest. In terms of my personal services, I do a lot of workshops for faculty, actually, for faculty at the university or different organizations on emotional sustainability. So bringing mental health and looking at how, like, practical ways. And I think in that way, I'm following my professor, Talvin Shahar, like looking at sustainable ways to have an organization, especially now during COVID, where like the emotional support is so important, and we're still not used to what is like the structured way that would actually ensure people keeping up with themselves. Like when you're disempowered, it shows up everywhere in your work. It shows up in your life, in your personal life, and career-wise. So that's another thing that I do. I do consulting, and I do a lot of user experience design. But really, it's really I'm really tying that up. I'm tying that a lot with the human interaction, which is the part that I love. So if it's networking workshops with online and in-person networking, are lectures that I really love to give. They're very interactive and really helping people think about who are they talking to and how to create real connections. In addition to now how to take care of yourself personally, which is really fun because I'm doing that now with my students at the university. I think my larger context is kind of like more of an experience of belonging in a world where there's like so much isolation. It's so easy to fall into our fears, and we are social creatures, so we're not used to having our own device, right, to like interact with people like always by ourselves, not have an accountability system around us. So when I say mental health, I'm looking at like really flourishing and how to celebrate and how to strengthen your virtues and virtues and strength, and how to increase your emotional immune system, right? Just like a physical immune system. You will get sick at some point, but if your immune system is strong, you'll deal with it better and faster. And so we all have bad days, but it's finding ways to deal with it better and faster. And accept
creativity. Can we enhance creativity? I believe you're often asked this question as a creative person, because not everyone is creative. I won't consider myself as creative. I can't produce a documentary what you're doing. I can't sing. I can't dance. Can we develop creativity?
Oh, wow. I'm first of all curious. I kind of want to ask you what makes you think that you are not creative. I think I'm asking you from the place of like, how do you define creativity? But yeah, if you could tell me a little bit of your experience.
I would describe myself as resourceful, because that's what people would describe me. Creativity is something that you're able to express yourself in an artistic way. I draw. I can draw, but that's my limit when it comes to creativity. I can't do what you're doing. I can't I can't sing. I can't dance, and that's for me. That's something more creative.
So I'll just say, you say can't sing and can't dance. I'll just add yet. Can't sing yet or can't dance yet. I think creativity is a way of being, just like motivated is a way of being. So being creative or being motivated or being excited, being alive there are ways of being that we could generate, and we all have ways that we like to be creative in, and then we have skills that we could use, like learning how to draw. Like drawing is a skill that one could develop. Singing, to my surprise, is a skill that anyone can develop. Yes. Especially today, if you want to create electronic music, there's so many fun ways to play with your voice. And even loving the sound of your own voice is a way of being, and it's something that we generate. So there are tools, just like drawing, just like dancing, that you literally, it's just, it's a skill that you could develop. Some people find it much easier, and some people find it harder. But being creative is an experience, and I'm asking you your experience of being creative. The way that you mentioned resourceful, and I think resourceful might not be how you would think creative is, but it's an extremely creative thing to find people. And that it's not something that everyone has, right? Not everyone is so creative in finding colorful people and individuals and networking. So that experience of creation, of making something that wasn't there and creating it, and finding different aspects that weren't there before and putting them together, is kind of English is my second language. Sound like I said, trying to find the right grammar to describe it. But it's a way of being more than an inheritance, inherent skill. So some people are great cooks. I'm not a great cook.
I'm not a great cook either. But Shalhavit, what do you think you would be doing if you didn't work as a researcher, as a creative person? Well, what would have been the Shalhavit that we have now?
Oh, wow. Well, to be honest, if it was 15 years ago where I was about to become a rabbi and, live in Jerusalem with a Jewish community, probably a little bit more covered up. Being a mother to a lot of kids. I'm still planning to be a mother to a lot of kids. That's in the works. However, that was like a path that I could have gone on. And there was a path that I wanted to do, just create huge paintings. I used to love to paint. And, today my visual art, because I'm so passionate about reaching people, then I moved to digital art. According to my logic, right? Some people would influence a lot of people by making a huge graffiti on a wall, and that would make a big difference. Through my personal experience, what I see missing and what I would like to see more is multimedia that reaches a lot of people. So that's where I chose to focus. But there was definitely a part there when I was a kid, kind of just seeing myself always in a studio and making things. I made a sparkly tree a year and a half ago just because it was fun. The goal was to be donated to the children's department in the hospital. It didn't fit all the restrictions because of fire safety. But yeah, just bedazzling a huge tree, making huge art. I think that's something, but it is creative.
Yeah.
Maybe the other one was just, to be a rabbi.
Okay. And how do you relax? What's your de-stressing outlet?
That's a good one. I'm still an athlete, so it would be lifting weights and running. However, I just started a journey. So through my fitness competitions, there was something I did to my back that only now I'm starting to look at. And my chiropractor told me I'm not allowed to exercise for a few months. So I could do stretching, and it's a new time for me to look at what do I do to de-stress. I'm allowed to do light walking. So actually, being outside is a huge one. For me to de-stress. Sleeping, taking a nap is huge. And that's probably the number one is taking a nap. I actually, in my festival, the physical one in the future, there'll be napping booths. And really, I want to encourage one day in cities is having napping booths, because I think sleep would make a huge difference for so many of us, for our well-being and our mental health. So right now, the de-stressing is just going for a walk outside, as simple as it is. It's just a light walk and just letting the thoughts go by. There's the Barbara Fredrickson from UCLA studies. She calls it broaden and build. Right, your visual periphery keeps on getting changing visuals all around you. Some people go for a drive. I like to go for a walk.
Okay, and finally, Shalhavit, what else is in the pipeline? Anything else that you want to do? Any upcoming project?
Well, there's post-COVID where PosiFest as a festival is already have sister festivals. So we already have established collaborations with impact festivals in Vancouver, Canada. We have invitations to have the physical festival after we do the one in Edinburgh. We'll have one in London, in California, in New York, in Boston, in Tel Aviv, and in Nepal. We have PosiFest has been every Sunday for a while. We've been meeting online with an orphanage in Nepal, and so that was one of the physical places to go to post. Oh, and the Gambia. Idu, who's one of our hosts, he's a strong stand for African men's mental health because it's very tabooed there. And so PosiFest in the Gambia might be one of the first ones. But PosiFest in Nepal is very much in the cards. And the orphanage just asked us to create a 5-hour festival with the orphans. So that will be live online on December 5th, I think. Is it December 5th? Yeah, in 2 weeks. So PosiFest Nepal would be on Saturday, starting, I think it's 11 a.m. their time, which is 5 a.m. UK time until 11 a.m. UK time, but you could always watch it later if you don't wake up in those hours. So PosiFest Nepal is definitely coming up online. I'm working on a few more songs, and then the final projects for my PhD where I'm going to use the word God willing. I'm working right now on my ethics with the NHS to actually do a music video project with young people at the mental health department in Edinburgh. So it has a lot of, there's a lot of responsibility there and a lot of ethical considerations to be really, really, to make sure it has complete integrity with the young people through their treatment and create something that's anonymous enough and empowering enough to make a difference for them and be a music video to reach the world.
You're ready,
and many more after that.
Yeah, you're really very busy. So what I'll do, Shalhavit, is I'll put all those links. I presume all of those will be on your website. So I'll just drop the link on your website, the link to your website on the video description box. But Shalhavit-Simcha Cohen, thanks for joining me. It's a pleasure having you and hearing about all the wonderful things that you do. I look forward to hearing more about your work.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform and sharing me, Dennis. And then thank you for whoever is watching right now. Totally acknowledge you for your curiosity, and please get in touch if you want to become part of PosiFest, or there's always music collaborations. There's the last music video has 38 different voices in different languages saying "You Are Enough." So I'm always happy for people to contribute because it's really, if I want to reach a lot of people, it has to be a lot of people. And yeah.
So I'll put the link to your website so that people can learn more about those stuff. But thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
Talking to you.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait to have you on PosiFest to share something as well.
Yeah, thank you.